Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls.
Hi, Rebels. This is Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, the interview. I'm Camille Stennis, producer and sound designer here at Rebel Girls. For today's interview, we've got two Rebel Girls to introduce you to. Megalyn Echikunwoke, who narrated Naomi Osaka's story, and Celeste Vissiere, also known as Celeste the Therapist, who's going to tell us more about taking care of our bodies and our minds. Let's start with Megalyn. Hey, Megalyn, can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hi, my name is Megalyn Echikunwoke. I am an actor. I'm an athlete. I'm a singer. I'm a dancer. I'm a writer. I'm about to direct my first film. I'm lots of things.
That is a lot of things. Megalyn, you brought us the story of Naomi Osaka, the awesome tennis player. How did you relate to her story?
Well, I identify with Naomi's story so much because coincidentally, like her, I am from a few different cultures. My dad, who died when I was very young, was Nigerian. My mom is American, and I grew up on the Navajo reservation in northeastern Arizona. And that culture had a huge impact on me and is a part of me.
Like Naomi, you started your career pretty young too, didn't you?
I started at 14, so I was a little older than Naomi. And looking back now, I definitely could have used a lot more support from family, friends, and I definitely could have used investment in my mental wellness. But when you start young and you're sort of tossed into a different culture, a different world, it can be really confusing and you can forget yourself. And that's not good. I think it's definitely important to maintain a strong sense of self. So I really commend Naomi for being so young and saying, no, I am not doing this. My mental health matters.
That's such an important part of Naomi's story, and we're going to get more into that later too. But Megalyn, we ask every rebel this question. If you could go back and give yourself a piece of advice when you were a kid, what would you say?
If I could go back to when I was a kid, a smaller kid, because I'm still a kid, I think the first piece of advice I would give myself is remember to breathe, take a breath, in and out. And the second piece of advice I would give myself is to, and this may sound trite, trust your intuition, trust your gut. It's really easy to second guess yourself, but just don't. What happens if you don't second guess yourself and you just trust yourself? Because you're there for a reason. You're where you're supposed to be. So just let divinity guide you and see what happens.
That is definitely some solid advice. Okay, finally, what makes you a rebel girl?
I'm proud of myself for being really brave at a young age. I think, especially when I started in this career, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how hard it was going to be or how hard it would get. I just went for it. I think back on when I was younger and a lot of times where I just decided to be brave and it always paid off. I never regret being brave, even though in the moment it's really scary.
Wow, I think bravery is definitely a great quality in a rebel girl. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. Now, Rebels, Naomi Osaka got a lot of attention when she decided not to play in a big tennis tournament, the French Open, because she needed to take care of herself. We wanted to hear more about how important that is for all of us. My next guest is therapist Celeste Vissiere. Celeste, tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, my name is Celeste Vissiere, but people know me as Celeste the Therapist. I am a mental health therapist from Boston, Massachusetts, and I talk to people for a living.
How did you decide you wanted to be a therapist?
So I decided I was going to become a therapist because I realized I really enjoyed talking to people and helping people. And I also struggled with depression growing up. I went to therapy myself and learned so much about emotions. And now I really want to share what I've learned, not just educationally, but personally to other people.
That's really cool. In talking about Naomi's story, she's a world-renowned athlete and an advocate for mental health. What advice would you give someone like her to deal with stress?
So for people that may be struggling, like in Naomi's case, know that what you may need to do may not feel good, and it may look different than what the rest of society is doing, or maybe even your culture. But sometimes it does require getting a little bit uncomfortable to get comfortable with some of the stresses you're dealing with.
Are there some specific ways to deal with that stress that you might recommend?
For me, I love hiking. I love music. Those things help reduce stress. Moving your body is huge, and sleep. Those are the top 3 things: moving your body, sleep, and healthy eating. I love to stress because a lot of that is within our control. I think we forget the power that we have within to make changes. And it's not always easy to do so, but it's important.
That makes a lot of sense. You have such good advice for kids. What advice would you give yourself when you were a kid, if you can go back in time?
You know, when I was reading Naomi's story, one of the things I thought about was when she said it's okay to not be okay. And that's one of the things I wish I knew growing up, because I think a lot of times I internalized a lot of things and it made it harder for me. So if I can go back and talk to myself, I would tell myself that it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah, that is important to hear for sure. Okay, last question. What makes you a rebel girl?
So I, Celeste the therapist, I'm a rebel girl because I have definitely defied the odds. I feel like, in my culture, in my household, mental health was not discussed. And so despite my upbringing, I decided to get uncomfortable and learn about mental health and seek mental health services. And now I'm here with you sharing Naomi's stories. I think that's what makes me a rebel girl.
That's pretty great, Celeste. Thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for listening. If you like the show, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, and share it with all of your friends. Catch you next time, and stay rebel.